I sat on the edge of our neatly made bed, feeling the weight of loneliness pressing down on my chest like a heavy stone. Michael had been working late again, buried in his projects and meetings, leaving me to navigate the silence of our home alone. The walls felt like they were closing in, the ticking clock echoing my growing despair. I picked up my phone, scrolling through social media mindlessly, but the bright images of happy couples only deepened my sense of isolation. Maybe I should call Carol, I thought, her name flickering in my mind like a beacon of warmth. She was always so full of life, so vibrant, and I found myself missing her company more than I cared to admit. After all, she was not just my mother-in-law. She was a confidant, a woman who understood the complexities of love and marriage. With a deep breath, I dialed her number, my heart racing as I waited for her to pick up. "Sarah, how are you, sweetheart?" Carol's voice was like sunshine breaking through the clouds. "Hi, Carol. I'm okay, just feeling a bit lonely." Michael's been swamped with work, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry to hear that. Why don't you come over for dinner?" "I'd love to see you," she suggested, her enthusiasm infectious. "Really? That would be great. I'll be there in an hour," I replied, relief flooding through me. I needed this, a chance to escape my solitude. As I drove to Carol's house, I thought about the last time we'd spent time together. We'd laughed over glasses of wine, sharing stories and secrets, something I had missed in my marriage. When I arrived, the smell of her famous lasagna filled the air, and I felt an instant sense of comfort. "Sarah, darling," Carol greeted me with open arms, pulling me into a warm embrace. "You look beautiful." "Thanks, Carol. You always know how to make me feel special," I said, stepping inside, the familiar decor wrapping around me like a cozy blanket. We spent the evening reminiscing, our laughter mingling with the clinking of glasses. As the night wore on, the conversation took on a more intimate tone. We talked about our dreams, our fears, and the weight of expectations that often felt suffocating. "Love can be complicated, can it?" Carol said, her eyes glistening with a mixture of nostalgia and longing. "It really can. Sometimes I feel like I'm just lost," I confessed, my heart racing as I spoke. I had never shared these feelings with anyone. Yet with Carol, it felt safe. She reached across the table, her hand brushing against mine. "You deserve to be happy, Sarah. Don't ever forget that," she said softly, her gaze piercing through the facade I'd built around myself. In that moment, something shifted between us. The air crackled with unspoken tension, and I could feel my heart racing. Carol leaned in closer, her breath warm against my cheek as she whispered, "What if happiness is closer than you think?" My breath hitched as I realized what she was suggesting. I had never viewed our connection through that lens, but the intensity of her gaze ignited a fire within me that I couldn't ignore. "Carol," I started, but the words caught in my throat. "Just let it happen, Sarah," she urged, her voice low and inviting. Before I knew it, she was leaning in, her lips brushing against mine in a soft, hesitant kiss that sent shockwaves through my body. It was wrong, thrilling, and utterly intoxicating. We pulled back, both breathless, a mixture of shock and desire flooding the room. "I shouldn't have done that," I stammered, my heart pounding like a drum. "Maybe not," Carol said, her eyes dark with emotion. "But it felt right, didn't it?" I didn't have an answer, but I knew one thing for certain. This moment would change everything. I could feel the ground beneath me shift, and as I locked eyes with Carol, I realized that I was on the precipice of a dangerous new world, one that promised both exhilaration and peril. Little did I know that the storm of consequences was about to descend upon us. The air was thick with anticipation as I entered the dimly lit hotel room. My heart racing with a mix of excitement and trepidation, I glanced around, taking in the soft glow of the bedside lamp that painted the room in warm hues. It felt like a world away from my reality, a sanctuary where I could explore the depths of my desires without judgment. Carol was already there, her silhouette outlined against the window, the city lights twinkling behind her like a million secrets waiting to be unveiled. She said softly, turning to face me. There was a spark in her eyes that sent shivers down my spine. "You made it. I wouldn't miss this for anything," I replied, stepping closer. The thrill of our clandestine meeting surged through me, overwhelming the lingering guilt that had shadowed my thoughts since our last encounter. As I drew nearer, Carol stepped forward, her hand reaching out to caress my cheek. "You look beautiful," she murmured, her voice a sultry whisper that sent my heart racing. I leaned into her touch, the warmth of her palm igniting a fire within me that I could no longer ignore. "What if someone sees us?" I asked, though my voice lacked conviction. The thrill of the forbidden only heightened my desire. Carol chuckled softly, a sound that echoed in the intimate space. "Let them. This is our moment, Sarah. We deserve this." I hesitated for a brief moment, but the longing in her gaze pulled me in. I closed the distance between us, our lips meeting in a tentative kiss that quickly deepened. The outside world faded away, leaving just the two of us tangled in a whirlwind of passion and secrecy. God, I've wanted this. Carol breathed against my lips, her hands tangling in my hair, pulling me closer. Each kiss ignited a spark, setting my entire being alight with a hunger I had never known. "Me too," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Lost in the moment. I can't believe we're actually here. With each passing second, the laughter and whispers that filled the room grew more fervent, our bodies moving in sync, as if we had danced the dance 1,000 times before. I felt liberated, shedding the weight of my daily life, the responsibilities that tethered me to a mundane existence. In this room, I was more than just a wife. I was a woman, consumed by desire. Suddenly, the moment was punctuated by a sharp sound, the unmistakable ring of my phone slicing through the atmosphere like a knife. My heart dropped as I fumbled to silence it, glancing at the screen to see Michael's name flashing ominously. My stomach twisted into knots. "Is it him?" Carol asked, her brow furrowing with concern. I nodded, panic rising in my chest. "I can't answer it. He'll know something's off." "Maybe you should call him back later," she suggested, her voice steady. But I could see the tension in her posture. "Yeah, you're right," I replied, trying to shake off the unease. But the nagging thought of Michael's growing suspicions lingered at the edges of my mind, threatening to shatter this beautiful illusion we had created. As the night wore on, we lost ourselves in each other. Yet a part of me remained restless, haunted by the potential fallout of our rendezvous. I couldn't shake the feeling that this blissful escape was teetering on the edge of disaster. "So let's make a promise," Carol said suddenly, pulling back to look into my eyes. "No more secrets, okay? We'll be honest about everything." I hesitated, the weight of her words sinking in. But what if honesty means hurting someone we care about? She sighed, brushing her fingers against my arm. "I know it's complicated, but we can't keep living in the shadows. We deserve to be happy." Her conviction stirred something within me, a flicker of hope that maybe we could navigate this tangled web together. But just as I began to entertain that thought, the door to our secluded paradise creaked open, and the world outside loomed closer, threatening to engulf us in its chaos. I was lost in a moment that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. The air between Carol and me was thick with an unspoken understanding, a connection I had never imagined could exist. Just as I leaned in, feeling the warmth of her breath against my skin, the door swung open with a force that rattled my very core. I turned, and there stood Michael, his face pale, eyes wide in disbelief. "Sarah?" He breathed, his voice barely above a whisper as he took in the scene before him. I was half draped across Carol, our fingers intertwined, the remnants of our shared laughter hanging in the air like a shroud. The moment shattered like glass, and I felt the sharp edges of reality cut through our bubble of desire. "Michael, wait." I stumbled out, my heart racing. I could see the turmoil in his eyes morphing quickly into anger. "It's not what it looks like." But before I could explain, Carol stood up, her composure faltering as she stepped forward. "Michael, please let me explain," she began, her voice steady yet marred by panic. "Explain what? That you're in bed with my wife?" His voice rose, a dangerous edge creeping in. What the hell is going on here? I felt the weight of the world crashing down on me. "Michael, please, it's complicated." I tried to articulate, but the words tumbled over one another. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you." "Complicated?" he echoed incredulously. You think that's going to cut it? You think it's complicated for me to watch my wife and my mother?" He paused, his fists clenched at his sides, his face contorting in pain. "How could you do this?" The room was thick with tension, each heartbeat amplifying the silence that followed. I felt the walls closing in around me, the heat of shame creeping up my neck. "I'm so sorry, Michael. I didn't want this to happen," I pleaded. My voice breaking. "Didn't want this to happen." He scoffed, shaking his head as if trying to shake off the absurdity of it all. "You think that makes it any better? You think I want to be here watching this?" Carol stepped between us, her eyes darting back and forth as if searching for a lifeline. "Michael, please listen to me. It was never supposed to go this far. We were just trying to connect." "Connect?" He spat, his voice laced with venom. "You've taken everything from me." I could see the pain etched into his features, the betrayal twisting like a knife in his gut. I had never seen him like this, so raw, so vulnerable. "I love you, Michael." "I do," I said desperately, hoping to reach him. "But I can't deny what happened between Carol and me, love." He laughed bitterly, a sound that twisted my heart. "Is that what you call this? A sick joke? How long has this been going on?" For a moment I hesitated, the weight of my guilt crashing down on me. It started when you began to pull away. I felt so alone and Carol was there for me. "Don't pin this on me." Michael's voice thundered, echoing off the walls. "I've been working to provide for this family while you've been betraying me. Do you even understand the depth of your betrayal?" The air was thick with accusations and heartbreak, each word carving deeper into my conscience. I felt torn, caught in a crossfire of emotions I could barely comprehend. "I never meant to hurt you, Michael. I never wanted this to happen," I said softly, tears streaming down my cheeks. "Maybe you should have thought of that before you decided to sleep with my mother." He shouted, his voice breaking. The hurt in his eyes was palpable, and I felt like I was drowning in a sea of regret. "Michael, please," Carol said, her voice trembling as she reached out to him. "Let's talk about this. You don't understand everything." But he stepped back, shaking his head, disbelief etched across his face. "No, I can't do this. I can't look at either of you right now." With that, he turned on his heel and stormed out, leaving the door wide open behind him. The silence that followed was deafening, and I felt like I was spiraling into an abyss, my heart shattering into a million pieces. I turned to Carol, who stood frozen, her expression a mix of fear and regret. "What have we done?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. The night after the explosive confrontation felt like a thick fog had descended upon my mind, obscuring all clarity. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding as guilt and longing wrestled within me. The silence of our home was deafening, every creak of the house echoing the chaos in my head. I could still feel the heat of Carol's body against mine, the way our laughter had mingled in the air, intoxicating and forbidden. That memory was tainted by the image of Michael's face. The shock, the betrayal, it was all too much. "Sarah?" Michael's voice cut through the silence, gentle yet filled with a hurt I had never heard before. He had moved into the guest room after the confrontation, and I could tell he was trying to be strong to give me space, but I could feel the cracks in his facade. "Yeah?" I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. I need to talk. Can you come in here?" I hesitated, the weight of my choice pressing down on me, but I knew I couldn't hide forever. I pulled myself out of bed, my heart racing as I made my way to the guest room. Michael sat on the edge of the bed, his hands clasped together. The sight of him, so vulnerable, so broken, made my heart ache. "I don't understand, Sarah. Why?" His eyes searched mine for answers that I didn't have. "Was it something I did? Did I not pay enough attention to you?" I shook my head, my heart pounding in my chest. "No, it's not that." "You're wonderful, Michael. Michael, I got lost." The admission felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I didn't mean for this to happen. "Then why her? Why my mother?" The pain in his voice was palpable. "I don't know," I confessed, tears welling up in my eyes. "It just happened. I never intended to hurt you." He stood up abruptly, pacing the small room. "You think that makes it any better?" that it just happened. "You betrayed me, Sarah. You betrayed our family." His voice rose, filled with anger and despair. "I'm so sorry," I cried, my voice cracking. "I never wanted to hurt you. I love you, but I also love her." The words hung between us, heavy and suffocating. Michael stopped pacing and turned to face me, his expression a mix of disbelief and heartbreak. "How can you love her? She's my mother. This is all so twisted." "I know," I said, feeling the weight of my confession settle around us. "But there's something between us that I can't explain. It's real, Michael. It's not just physical." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I knew well from the countless times he had been frustrated or overwhelmed. "What are we supposed to do now? You want me to just accept this? To let you go?" "I don't know," I replied, my voice barely audible. "I don't want to lose you, but I also can't deny what I feel for Carol. It's like she understands me in a way that I didn't know I needed." "Then maybe you should go to her," he said bitterly, the pain in his voice cutting deeper than any physical wound. "If that's where you think you'll find happiness." "No, Michael, please." I took a step towards him, desperate to bridge the chasm that had formed between us. "I don't want to choose. I don't want to hurt either of you." "Life isn't that simple, Sarah," he replied, his voice low and filled with resignation. "You can't have both. You need to decide what you truly want." I felt the tears spill over, running down my cheeks as I struggled to comprehend the gravity of my situation. My heart was torn in two, each half pulling me in different directions. The phone on the nightstand buzzed, breaking the tension. I glanced at it, surprised to see a message from an unknown number. My heart raced as I opened it, the words sending a chill down my spine. "I know what happened. We need to talk." I looked up at Michael, who was still trying to process my earlier confession. "Michael, But he was no longer looking at me. His gaze was fixed on the phone, and I could see the tension in his body as he took a step back. "Who is that?" he asked, his voice cold and distant. "I don't know," I said, my heart racing. "But it sounds serious. Maybe it's someone from your little affair." He shot back, his anger flaring once more. I felt a wave of panic wash over me. "No, please, I need to find out what this is about." "Go ahead," he said, crossing his arms defensively. "But don't expect me to wait around while you sort out your mess." As I stared at the screen, the weight of my choices bore down on me. I had to figure out what this message meant, but I also had to confront the reality of my heart. The tension hung heavy in the air, and I knew that whatever happened next would change everything. Sitting alone in the dim light of my living room, I felt the weight of the world pressing down on me. The shadows danced on the walls as my thoughts spiraled, consumed by the chaos that had unfolded in the last few days. My heart raced with confusion, torn between the love I once felt for my husband, Michael, and the intoxicating pull I felt toward Carol, his mother. A secret rendezvous turned into a tangled mess that I couldn't unravel. Just when I thought I was beginning to understand my feelings, a new revelation threatened to destabilize everything once again. I picked up my phone, staring at it as if it held the answers I desperately sought. The mysterious message I had received earlier lingered in my mind, hinting at secrets that could change everything. I decided it was time to confront Carol directly. If I were to navigate this maze of passion and betrayal, I needed to know the truth about her past, specifically what she wasn't telling me. The evening air was thick with tension as I drove to Carol's house. Each mile felt like an eternity. My heart pounding with every thought of the confrontation to come. What if the secrets she held were darker than I could ever imagine? I parked in front of her quaint home, the familiar sight eliciting a mix of comfort and dread. As I approached the door, I hesitated for a moment, my hand hovering over the doorknob. Taking a deep breath, I knocked. "Sarah?" Carol's voice came through the door, laced with surprise. "Is everything okay?" I forced a smile, though I knew she couldn't see it. "Can we talk?" "It's important." "Of course, come in," she replied, opening the door wider and gesturing for me to enter. As I stepped inside, the warmth of her home enveloped me, but it did little to quell the storm brewing inside me. Carol looked radiant, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders, but I could see the flicker of concern in her eyes. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice soft but edged with tension. I took a moment to collect my thoughts before speaking. I need to know about your past, Carol. There's something I'm missing. She furrowed her brow, clearly taken aback. My past? What do you mean? Michael. I mean, he's been acting different since everything happened. And then there was that message I received suggesting there's more to your story. Something I don't know. My voice trembled slightly, revealing the fear I held within. Carol's expression shifted, a mixture of surprise and something akin to guilt washing over her features. Sarah, please, just tell me, I interrupted, my patience wearing thin. I deserve to know the truth. She sighed, looking down at her hands. It's not easy for me to talk about this. There are things in my past that I've kept hidden, even from Michael. Like what? I pressed, my heart racing. What could possibly be so significant that you would keep it from your own son? Her gaze met mine, and for a fleeting moment, I saw a vulnerability I hadn't noticed before. I had a relationship once, with someone who was very close to our family. It ended badly, and I never wanted it to affect Michael. I thought I could bury it. My stomach dropped. How close? Who was it? She hesitated, her breath hitching. It was your father, Sarah. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. I stumbled backward, feeling as if the ground had been ripped from beneath me. What? My father? Are you serious? I never wanted you to find out this way. It was a long time ago, before I met your mother. She hurried to explain, but her words felt like knives, each one piercing deeper. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you ever mention him? I felt the heat rising in my cheeks, anger and betrayal battling within me. I was trying to protect Michael. It was a mistake. A foolish fling that I regretted immediately. I thought it was behind me, she pleaded, her voice trembling. I shook my head in disbelief. The revelations crashed over me like waves, each one more tumultuous than the last. You had an affair with my father, and then you became involved with me. I never meant for it to happen this way, Sarah, she said, her eyes pleading for understanding. My feelings for you are real, but I was scared of losing everything. Scared. You've already lost everything? I shouted, frustration boiling over. This isn't just about us anymore, it's about our families. The room fell silent, the gravity of our situation pressing down on us. I knew I had to make a choice, but with each revelation, the ground shifted beneath me, and I was left questioning everything I thought I knew. The air in the living room felt heavy, charged with unspoken words and unresolved emotions. I stood by the window, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the floor, illuminating the chaos in my heart. My mind raced as I processed the staggering revelation that Carol's former lover was none other than Michael's estranged father. The thought sent a shiver down my spine, twisting my gut in a way I hadn't anticipated. How could this be happening? My eyes darted toward the door, half expecting Michael to walk in at any moment. I heard the front door creak open and my breath hitched. I quickly turned, my heart pounding in my chest. It was Michael, a heavy briefcase in one hand and an expression of exhaustion on his face. He looked up, his eyes landing on me, and the warmth that usually filled the space between us felt icy and distant. "Sarah, you're home early," he said, his tone casual but laced with an undercurrent of tension. I forced a smile, my mind racing. "Yeah, just took the afternoon off. Thought I'd tidy up a bit." "Right." His gaze flickered past me and I knew he sensed something was off. But how could I explain the turmoil brewing within me? The truth about Carol wasn't just mine to share. It felt like a bomb waiting to explode. "Where's Carol?" he asked, his brow furrowing slightly. "She had some errands to run." I stammered, my heart sinking as I lied. Just then, the front door swung open again and in walked Carol. Her face a mask of tense confidence that crumbled the moment her eyes met Michael's. "Michael," she exclaimed, a hint of panic in her voice. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, his tone sharp. I was just... She hesitated, glancing at me for support. "This isn't what it looks like," I blurted out, though the words felt hollow even as they left my lips. Michael's eyes darted between us, searching for answers in the tension that crackled like electricity in the air. "Then what is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my wife and mother are hiding something." "Michael, please," Carol started, but her voice faltered under the weight of his accusation. "Don't please me, Carol. You've already crossed a line I didn't think possible." His voice was a mixture of anger and hurt, and I could see the vulnerability in his eyes that made my heart twist painfully. "Michael, I need you to understand," or I tried to intervene, but he cut me off. "Understand what? That you've betrayed me? That my mother has been lying to me?" His voice rose with each word, the hurt and disbelief palpable. The room fell silent, and I felt the weight of the world pressing down on my shoulders. I wanted to scream, to cry, to run away from it all. But instead, I stood there, paralyzed by the enormity of the situation. "I need to know the truth," Michael said, his voice now low and steady, but it contained a tremor of vulnerability that made me ache for him. I glanced at Carol. My heart racing. "We need to tell him, Carol. He deserves to know." Before she could respond, there was a loud knock at the door, startling us all. "What now?" Michael snapped, frustration etched on his face as he moved to answer it. As he opened the door, I felt a chill run down my spine. A figure stood there, silhouetted against the fading light. I couldn't see their face, but the tension in the room escalated, thickening the air around us. "Who are you?" Michael asked, his voice firm despite the uncertainty in his eyes. The figure stepped forward, revealing a face I recognized from whispers and half-remembered stories. "I'm here for Carol," they said, their voice low and gravelly. My heart raced as I turned to Carol, who looked as if she had seen a ghost. The secrets that had begun to unravel now threatened to consume us all. I could feel the weight of the choices before me, the impossible decisions that would shape our lives forever. Could I still protect my family, or was I destined to watch it all crumble?